Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now in this one I want to talk about a couple of the deals I've found on the used market this week. I buy and sell quite a few PC systems, components and accessories, all with the intention of making videos, so I thought it might be interesting and maybe helpful to talk about them before they get used as part of a different video or get sold as spares or repairs, because the deal was too good to be true. Thankfully that doesn't happen very often, but let's take a look at a couple of the things I picked up over the last few days. We should give these videos or products a name. Maybe if we find a really good deal, it can be known as a deal I can't keep. Something so good that I just have to sell it on for a quick profit. For short, we'll call it DIC. No, never mind, forget about it. Now, I often look out for newly listed PCs that are described as 4 parts or not working on eBay. Sometimes this can mean that the machine just lacks 1 or 2 components to get it working, maybe RAM or a CPU. Sometimes a computer sold for parts might just be missing a hard drive, maybe a combination of everything. One such example was a Packard Bell system that I found for a total of £18.50. This selection of parts is what remains of it. See, there was a case to go with this, and all that the PC needed to get it working was a power supply. Now, the supply in question was of a certain form factor, a specific model to be exact, which I thought was too expensive to be worthwhile, and bring this PC back to life, it would have basically cost me the same as what I could have sold it for. Now luckily I managed to sell the case on its own locally for £10 to a PC repair shop. This means that the parts here just cost £8.50. I mean, they look pretty ancient, but I'm sure we can do something with them. I'm thinking some sort of super low-end build that we can stick inside a different case and make it look a bit nicer. Included here is a triple-core Athlon CPU and 3GB of RAM, and I think it will be interesting to see how a 3-core CPU handles itself these days, if any of this works, of course. This board uses a 20-pin power connector, and after finding a spare OEM PSU to test it with, before realising it had a fixed 24-pin connector, I decided to just go for it anyway and hope that nothing broke or exploded. Honestly, this is fine, at least short term. I quickly found out that this machine didn't like my Windows 10 boot drive, which was an SSD, nor did it want to boot from any drive with a pre-existing installation of Windows on it. Instead, I dug out my old WD Velociraptor 10K drive and began the installation process from the start. Excuse the absolute beast of a monitor. I've just reviewed this in a previous video actually, and it was amazing to use for the week. I'll leave a link to this 49-inch behemoth down below. I love the way that everything is just stretched across the screen pre-driver installation. Now interestingly, Windows 10 felt pretty snappy, even with just 3 cores and 3 gigs of RAM. I also let the drivers install automatically from the Windows update, and it turns out we have GeForce 9200 integrated graphics, which, although old and useless by today's standards, really surprised me. I was able to play a couple of classics, namely GTA 3 and Half-Life, at 1080p using this iGPU, which is apparently about 20% worse than the legendary Radeon HD 5450. Just thought I'd throw that PCI Express card in there as a point of reference, because some of you may remember just how awful that is at gaming, but it was never really meant to be a gaming card. Now, while we're on the subject of discrete GPUs, none of mine wanted to work in the PCIe slot. Maybe it was the lack of full 24-pin power connection, or maybe it's just broken. Maybe my GPU collection has just somehow, by some huge coincidence, failed en masse, but we'll investigate further soon. I think I read somewhere that this motherboard only supports 4GB of DDR2 as well. I hope that is wrong, I think it might be, but I'll detail all my trials and tribulations in an upcoming video build. Still, for what ended up being £8.50, I've certainly been surprised by the integrated GPU with this config, so that's one thing to be pleased about. The next component I wanted to share with you was a graphics card that I recently found. Now, one question I get quite a bit is regarding the purchase of second-hand GPUs on sites like eBay. My advice for buying on eBay basically comes down to a few things. Always check the seller feedback, see if they have a lot of feedback as a seller and not just a buyer. Make sure they also have photos of the actual item and not just stock images too. Also, check the age of the account. eBay will also let you know if they are a registered business seller, and if that's the case, then their business address will be listed, which may give you more peace of mind. At the end of the day though, eBay in my experience are usually very good with resolving issues if you do have any, and most sellers I've dealt with have always been good with their return policies too, whenever I've had to send something back. It's not happened very often, but it has happened. The card in this box was sold as used from a business seller who deals with a lot of PC parts. At the time of purchase, this was the cheapest GTX 1080 listed, and I really wanted to do a 1080 build video in 2023. This one is a PNY XLR8 Gaming OC edition, which has a modest overclock, but I think it looks fantastic. This red and black card is also pretty slim and looks great inside my case, especially with the red hue that the fans give off. While we're on the subject of fans, all three of them stay spinning, even at idle. It is a pretty low speed, and I don't mind it, but they are slightly audible, so anyone looking for complete silence when just browsing the web or getting some work done may want to opt for a different model. I think I'm just being oversensitive to the noise, to be honest. I do have my PC on my desk next to me with no side panel after all. This card requires just one single 8-pin connector, and while it lacks DLSS support and hardware-based ray tracing, FSR definitely helps it out in some of the more intense gaming scenarios. I think for the money, however, one of these is still a pretty good choice for 1080p gaming. This PNY model isn't getting too warm or loud under load either. There is a little bit of whine coming from it, but I only noticed this when I took my headphones off. I'll have a full video on some sort of triple core setup soon, hopefully, and I'll also be sticking the 1080 in a budget PC build to see how it does as part of a low-cost system these days. Until then, I hope you've enjoyed what is a slightly different video, a preview, if you will, 2 videos in one, I guess, and a look at a couple of deals that I found this week. Hopefully, this has been interesting, and the story as to why I bought them has been informative too. But there we go, maybe I should combine the triple core CPU and the 1080 just to see how bad things are, if I can get that PCI Express slot working. Of course, I can't imagine that would end very well. I think the Athlon probably lacks certain instruction sets to run some modern games. I might be thinking of the old Phenom processors there, but maybe we'll have to try that out, providing of course we can actually use more than 4 gigs of RAM as well. Until the next one then, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already and you want to, of course, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.